In our last talk, we have discussions about the emergence of Buddhism. And Buddhism emerged as a critical response to the two theoretical views, that is, the eternalism and annihilationism. These two extreme speculations came from the psychology of human beings. We call it the psychology of eternalism and the psychology of annihilationism. This means that our psychology, our mental desire, can determine our viewpoint of human life and the world, and thus which will determine the practice of a religious or all the people. Because of the psychology of eternalism, people believe in an eternal self because they want to have being forever. That's called bhavatanha. Bhava means being or becoming. Tanha means craving, desire for an eternal existence. On the other hand, psychology of annihilationism, this kind of view believes that it is an end to a human being after a human being dies. That's called vibhatanha. Vibhaha means non-being. Vibhatanha means craving for non-being. It means that these two extreme viewpoints of human beings came from our psychology. Our psychology is a kind of speculation. It is the outcome of our thinking. But in Buddhism, it is quite different. Our Buddha emphasized the importance of pragmatic experience or the experimental proof. We have to control our sense organs and to control our mind in order that we can observe the ultimate reality of our human being. And after we practice the Sila, Samadhi, then we practice the Vipassana. Vipassana means to discriminate, to find the true reality of our existence. And our existence is nothing but the aggregation of rupas and the namas. They are the five aggregates. This is the main point of our last talk. And tonight, we continue to discuss about our psychology. Thus, the mutual conflict between the spiritual and the materialist theories represents not only the mutual conflict between two perennial ideologies, but also the human mind's oscillation between two deep-seated desires. If we find that the two extreme viewpoints of human existence, that is the spiritual eternalism and the materialist annihilationism, they represent not only the mutual conflict between ideologies, but also it shows the human mind's oscillation between two deep-seated desires. Oscillation means to move again and again between 2 points, just like the pendulum of a clock. Ancient clock, there's a pendulum. It will move to left and then to right, left and right. That is oscillation. Oscillation between 2 deep-seated desires. Now, there are 2 kinds of desires which have become our disposition or our habitual tendency. These 2 kinds of desires are deeply seated in our subconsciousness. We have the psychology move from one extreme to the another extreme, just like the pendulum of the clock. Venerable Nyanaponika was a German monk who took his renunciation in Sri Lanka. He became a very famous Buddhist scholar of the Theravadan Buddhism. He said, these one-sided views may also spring from emotional regions, expressive of the basic attitudes to life. They may reflect the moods of optimism and pessimism, hope and despair, the wish to feel secure from metaphysical support, or the desire to live without inhibitions in a materialistically conceived universe. The theoretical views of eternalism and the annihilationism held by an individual will change during his lifetime, together with the corresponding moods of emotional needs. Nyanaponika says, these one-sided views means 2 extremes. One is the extreme of spiritual eternalism, and another extreme of materialist annihilationism. They go to one side in contrast to each other. This one-sided means not the holistic view, but it is one-sided view, not holistic. If a view is called holistic, it means that it is a complete observation of a matter or of a phenomenon. However, the eternalism and the annihilationism are one-sided. They are not holistic. They go to extreme. This one is one-sided views may also it means the reason is emotion. The emotion means a very strong feeling, like anger or like craving. This is emotional reason. It is out of our emotion. Motion means to move. The emotion means to move out. Therefore, emotional means to move out against another person. If it is a move, it may be the movement in our mind. But if we call it emotion, it is the movement against other people. For example, we hate some people or we love some people. They are very strong feeling. The feeling outward, the free feeling in connection with another person. That's called emotion. Emotional reason. The reasons comes out of our unbalanced mind. Our mind is not peaceful. Our mind runs out against other people. Emotional reason, expressive of the basic attitudes of the basic attitudes to life. This is our viewpoints, our life viewpoints. Emotional reasons expresses our basic attitudes to life. They may reflect the move, the moves. Moves is the state of our feeling. The state of our feeling is called moods. The moods of optimism and pessimism. They are two extremes in contrast to each other. Hope or the despair is another pair. The wish to feel secure through metaphysical support or the desire to live without inhibitions in a materialistically conceived universe. This is another pair of extremes. The first one is the wish to feel secure through metaphysical support. The metaphysical support is our thought, support from our thought that we want to feel secure by means of our thought, not by the physical matters, but our metaphysical thought. Another extreme is to the desire to live without inhibition. Inhibition means prohibition. We want to have the freedom, total freedom in a materialistically conceived universe. It means that these people conceive our life and our universe is nothing but the accumulation of different materials. There is no spirit, only materials exist in our universe and in our life. Therefore, they desire to live with freedom. They don't want to have any constraint from our morality or from the law or the social customs. They want to enjoy the materials happiness. The theoretical views of eternalism or annihilationism held by an individual may well change during his lifetime. It means that a person may change in his lifetime from one extreme of eternalism to another extreme of annihilationism, because it is also the principle of impermanence. And the impermanence is the result of the dependent arising, together with the corresponding moves of emotional needs. This is the emotional region, and Nilda Panikatera also mentioned another needs, that is the intellectual needs. Intellectual needs is a kind of rational needs. The emotional needs is a kind of feeling, but intellectual needs is a kind of rational, or a kind of reason. There's a reason here. It is supported by one's ideology. It is quite different. Emotional is something like our feeling, and the intellectual is not feeling. It is a kind of knowledge. It is a kind of ideology. Our intellectualness could also have an impact on their prevalence and proliferation. This Taylor says, why we have two extreme viewpoints of life. One is eternalism and another annihilationism. They are very popular in the history of humankind. We can find these two viewpoints from the very beginning of our history until now. Why? Nilda Panikatera says, besides the emotional moods, we may find the intellectual needs also play a very important role on the popularity of these two extreme life viewpoints. He says, there's also an intellectual root, the speculative and the theorizing propensity of the mind. Certain thinkers, people of the theorizing type, did theoretical in Buddhist psychology, are prone to create various elaborate philosophical systems in which, with great ingenuity, they play off against each other the pairs of conceptual opposites. The great satisfaction this gives to these engage in such thought constructions further reinforces the adherence to them. Okay, in addition to the emotional moods, that is the desires to live forever, or to the desire to enjoy the material satisfaction. Besides this, there's another reason, that is the intellectual root. We may distinguish these two kinds of reason. One is the emotional, and the another is intellectual. In English, we call the emotional mood heart, and we call the intellectual root mind. So one is heart, one is mind. And the mind concerns about emotion. Heart concerns about emotion. The mind concerns about intellect or knowledge. And from the heart and the mind, we can understand that the philosophies or the life viewpoints coming from the heart and coming from the mind are always biased. They are not objective, but they are subjective. We have heart. If our behavior is controlled or influenced by our heart, then we are emotional. On the other hand, if our behavior is controlled or influenced by our mind, then it is rational. Both heart and the mind are biased, are subjective. They are not objective. As we know already that Buddha advised us, we have to practice Sila first. We practice Sila in order to get rid of the influence from our heart. Let us not to be emotional. After the practice of Sila, we practice Samadhi and Vipassana. It is the control of our mind to concentrate our attention, to concentrate our mind, not to let our mind wander away. We want our mind under control so that our mind can become peaceful. When our mind becomes peaceful, we can observe the ultimate reality of our life. So we find that Buddha is quite different from another philosophers or religious leaders. Our Buddha observe the ultimate reality of our life and even the universe by means of the pacification of our heart and the mind. The pacification of our heart means that we should not be emotional when we observe our life and the universe. Pacification of our mind, that means that we should be peaceful in mind. We should be totally objective and transparent in our observing the life and the world. It is quite different. And here we find that Nyanaponika tells us that besides the emotional region, there's intellectual region. Emotional region comes from the so-called heart in English. The intellectual region comes from the so-called mind in English. However, in Buddhism, we have to control our mind and our heart and to be totally peaceful above from the influence of heart and the mind, not to be emotional and not to be intellectual. Intellectual means our thinking, our reasoning, or speculation. We should not speculate about anything. We should achieve the peace of our mind. And after that, we can use the peaceful mind to observe the reality of our life. The Taylor says, there is also an intellectual root. Intellectual root means the speculative and the theologian propensity of the mind. So we have the heart, and now we have the mind. We discuss about the mind. The mind can speculate and theorize. It is quite rational, not emotional, but rational. We use our mind to think this and that, and we always say it is out of my reasoning. Certain thinkers, people of the theologian type, in Pali is called Ditti Charita. Ditti means view. Charita means the action of making certain views. This is called Ditthicharita. It refers to people of the theologian type. It means that these people like to theorize anything. They call themselves rational, but according to Buddhism, they are not totally objective because their theorization or their speculation always comes from their propensity or the mental tendency. In Buddhist psychology, we call it Ditthicharita. They are prone to means they tend to create various elaborate philosophical systems. They like to postulate certain viewpoints about life and argue against each other, in which, with great ingenuity means, of course, they are very creative and they can coin many new terminologies to support their thinking. Elaborate philosophical systems in which is great ingenuity. They play off against each other the pairs of conceptual opposites. Play off this term comes from the game. The game, for example, the basketball or the baseball game, if two teams are even after the time is out, then they have to extend for 5 minutes or 10 minutes to play again to decide which team will win the contest. It is called play off. They fight against each other against and again. They play off, they extend their argumentation again and again against each other. The pairs of conceptual opposites, for example, eternalism and annihilationism, also the so-called sensual satisfaction and the so-called mortification. They are two extremes of conceptual opposites. The great certification, this gives to those engaged in such thought constructions for the reinforces the adherence to them. Thought constructions. Thought construction means that their viewpoints, their concepts comes from their thinking, not comes from their peaceful observation, not comes from the so-called samadhi and vipassana in Buddhism. And that before we practice samadhi, we have to practice shila in order to keep clean of our sense organs. And after that, we practice the samadhi in order to bring our mind, our attention to a certain degree of peace, and therefore we can use this peaceful mind to observe the reality. The great certification, those philosophers or those thinkers can find great certification from their argumentation, from their viewpoints against each other, will further reinforce, will strengthen again the adherence to them. They cling to their ideology further because they find certification from their viewpoint. This is the Pharisee of philosophy. If Buddhism disassociates itself from spiritual eternalism, this means that it does not recognize some spiritual substance within us which relates us to a transcendental reality. A reality that serves as the ultimate ground of existence. Then we start to discuss about the standpoint of Buddhism. Buddhism disassociate means Buddhism keeps aloof from first spiritual eternalism. It means that Buddhism doesn't follow spiritual eternalism, and Buddhism doesn't think that there is an eternal spirit in our five aggregates. This means that it does not recognize, Buddhism does not recognize some spiritual substance. Of course, spirit is not a kind of substance, but it is a philosophical term to mean that almost other religion believe that there is a spirit or a soul or a principle which exists beyond our physical body. Spiritual substance or spiritual essence within us, within our body, which relates us to a transcendental reality. It means that our spirit, our soul is transcendental reality. Our soul or our spirit will not die in company with our body, but our spirit transcends our body, and our spirit is regarded as a reality, as a substance or as an existence, a reality that serves as the ultimate ground of existence. It means that spiritual eternalism believes that we have a spirit, and our spirit is the ultimate ground of existence. Uh, it is not born together with our birth, and it will not die together with our death of body. It is the soul or the self in this spiritual sense that connects the individual existence to a purported higher metaphysical reality. Spirit is not physical, and it is called metaphysical. It means the spirit is above our physical body, and the spirit is the ultimate existence, ultimate reality, or even spirit is the source of our life, of our body. Since Buddhism does not recognize the soul idea, the notion of a higher metaphysical reality finds no place in Buddhist teachings. Because Buddhism doesn't accept the soul idea. There is no soul idea in Buddhism. Because according to the Theravada teaching, our visual consciousness comes from the content of our eyes organ and the external material. Then we have the visible consciousness, and after that, after the emergence of our five sensual consciousness, we will have the mental consciousness. Our mental consciousness is the result of our five sense consciousness. So it is not eternal. Our mental consciousness depends on many factors. The most important factor is our five sense organs consciousness, the contact between our five sense organs and their external object. Therefore, we have the five kinds of sensual consciousness. After that, we have the mental consciousness. Therefore, our mental consciousness is not a kind of spirit or is not a kind of soul. There is no soul idea in Buddhism. Of course, we may argue that in the Vijnana theory, we have the Adaya consciousness. And also in Mahayana Buddhism, we may have the concept of Buddha nature or the Tathagata or the Tathagata Gotra. However, the Adaya consciousness is defined as ever-changing. Our Adaya consciousness is nothing but our habitual tendencies. And our habitual tendencies depend on our past behavior or our past thinking. They are ever changing. They are not eternal. They are changing from time to time. The so-called Buddha nature or the Tathagata or Tathagata is defined as pure. They are pure. We cannot call it existent. Also, we cannot call it non-existent. We cannot call it good or bad. We cannot call it eternal or annihilation. They are pure. They are free from any destination. They are free from any concept. They are pure, totally. Therefore, the idea of Adaya consciousness or Adaya Vijnana and the idea of Buddha nature or Tathata Kapa, Tathata Gocha are quite different from the soul idea because soul is defined as everlasting. There's no change. There's no change in the idea of soul. But Buddhism does not recognize the soul idea. The notion of a higher metaphysical reality finds no place in Buddhist teachings. Higher metaphysical reality. It should be reality, not reality. Please put I after arrow, R-E-A-L-I-T-Y. Metaphysical reality. Higher metaphysical reality may refer to our individual soul, or it may also refer to the Creator God. Both of them are higher than our body. They are not physical in Buddhism. We don't have the soul idea. It is only the world of sensory experience that Buddhism recognizes. The world that we experience through our six sense faculties. Okay, in Theravada Buddhism, also we may say in Mahayana Buddhism, or in all different schools of Buddhism, we emphasize the sensory experience. The sensory experience can be experienced by everybody. It is within our sensation, our perception, and our volitional formation. And of course, it is within the scope of our consciousness. Buddhism always emphasizes the experience. Buddhism is not a kind of philosophy, but it is a viewpoint of life, experiential life. Everybody can experience it. And so we can experience dukkha after practice, the practice of Buddhism. We can experience sukha. Of course, we can experience samsara. And in the same case, we can also experience nibbana. Every term in Buddhism can be experienced, can be understood by everybody. if we listen to the teachings of Buddha Dharma, then we can find that Buddha Dharma is not a kind of conceptual speculation, but it is a discussion on our experience. Everybody is the same. Everybody can understand the teachings of the Buddha, because the Buddha talks about experiences only. The Buddha doesn't talk about metaphysical thinking, but he talks about the real life. The real life means everybody can feel it, everybody can perceive it, everybody can understand it, and everybody can achieve Nibbana right here, right now, in this life, not in afterlife, not in the past life, but right here and right now. We can feel dukkha, and we can also feel sukha, and we can feel samsara now. We can also experience nibbana now, nothing else. Everything we can experience by ourselves. It is not a white token of the Buddha, but it is the different experience, the daily experience of everybody. We experience the whole world through our six sense faculties. Our six sense faculties means our eye, ear, nose, tongue, and the body, and also our mind. This is perhaps where Buddhism has company from all religions that come under eternalism, the religions that believe in an immortal soul and a higher reality, whether this higher reality is called God in a personal sense or Godhead in an impersonal sense. This is why it means that because Buddhism talks about the experience within our six sense faculties. Therefore, Buddhism is different from other religions. Other religions, eternalism. They believe eternalism. They believe that there is an immortal soul or an eternal spirit and a higher reality. The higher reality means our individual spirit comes from a creator God. The higher reality refers to the God, the creator. No matter whether this higher reality is called God or Godhead, we call it God. It means that we believe that God is the same as we human beings. The God also has eyes or hands, the legs, and so on. This is called God in a personal sense. We project the image of a human being to a God. The God is almost same as we human beings, and we can find this kind of ideology in the Greek and the Roman mythology. All the gods are same as human beings. All the gods have the desires, sensual desires, and all the gods have angry and the craving and the delusion like the human beings. And of course, in Christianity, there is a personalized God, and what we call Godhead. It means the God is considered having some characters. For example, the God means the omniscience or the omnipotent or the omni-existence. They are not personalized, but they are considered, the Godhead is considered as a kind of characteristics. We call it guna in Pali. This is the kind of Godhead. Godhead is defined in an impersonal sense. It is not regarded as a person, but it is regarded as having some supernatural powers. And interestingly, in Mahayana Buddhism, the so-called Dhammakaya is something like Godhead. The Nirmana Kaya and the Sampoka Kaya Buddhas are defined in a personal sense. However, the concept is different in Mahayana Buddhism. When we call it the Dhammakaya Buddha. Dhammakaya Buddha means a person who has realized the ultimate truth of all existence. And the Sambhogakaya is defined as the reward Buddha. Sambhogakaya Buddha is defined as reward Buddha. It means if a person practices Dharma and attain Buddhahood, then he can enjoy the reward or the effect of his practice of Buddha Dharma. And the Nirmanakaya Buddha is a kind of wisdom and compassion. It represents wisdom and compassion to educate, to liberate, or to release other beings from suffering. The concept is different from God and Godhead. If Buddhism dissociates itself from materialist annihilationism, this means that from the Buddhist perspective, the human personality is not a pure product of nature. We have discussed about the spiritual eternalism already. And now we come to the discussion of materialist annihilationism. Buddhism is different from materialist annihilationism. It means Buddhism doesn't think that our human personality is only a pure product of matter. A pure product of matter means a physical body. Because very obviously we have the consciousness, we have sensation, we have perception, we have feeling, we have volition. It is very clear for us. We can experience our sensation, feelings, conception, and so on. So our existence, our human personality is not only a pure product of matter. It is an uninterrupted and interconnected process of psychophysical phenomena that does not have a fortuitous beginning, aditya samappanni, nor an abrupt ending. Uh, our physical body or our existence or our human personality is an uninterrupted. It means it is ongoing all the time. And it is interconnected process. Connected process means that our mind can influence our body and our body can also affect our mind. They are mutually connected. They are mutually influenced by each other. So it is always ongoing and mutual relationship between our mind and the body. They are not concrete. They are changing all the time. It is called psychophysical phenomena. They are changing. That does not have a fortuitous beginning. Fortuitous beginning means the beginning has no reason. It means in Buddhism we believe even our existence is beginningless because our existence is dependent originated. Aditya samupanya. Samupanya means dependent arising. And aditya means cut off. Cut off. It means no dependent origination. However, the fundamental theory in Buddhism is dependent origination. No an abrupt ending. Uchetta. Uchetta means extinction or the cessation. There is no ending. Our life is going all the time. So many Buddhists or many people may believe that after one attains Nibbana, then his life stops. It is totally wrong because here we can find that in Buddhism, there is no fortuitous beginning and also no abrupt ending. When one attains Nibbana, it doesn't mean that one's life ends, but it means the cessation of the reasons of suffering, and therefore the cessation of suffering in mind. But life is going on in the future, even after a person attains arhanship, a person attains a parinibbana, the life still goes on. Of course, we cannot call it whether it will exist or not exist after an arhat dies. That actually an arhat will not die because an arhat is free from the so-called birth and the death. So we cannot call an arhat dies. We call it Parinibbana of an arhat. So in Buddhism, our life is no beginning and also no ending. Please don't believe or don't say that when an arhat attains nibbana, then his life comes to an end. In common with other religions, Buddhism too recognizes survival, belief in survival and the validity of the moral order. In common with all other religions, it means that although Buddhism is different from other religions, because other religions always believe an eternal soul, or they are spiritual eternalism. But Buddhism is not a kind of spiritual eternalism. However, Buddhism has something common to other religions. That is the survival, the first thing, the survival of our life. Even an arahant attains parinibbana, the arahant still survives after his death. Of course, we cannot call an arahant dies. We say an arahant attains parinibbana. It means survival. It is existent even after the death of an arahant or the death of a Buddha. This is the first thing in common with other religions that Buddhism has. And the second thing is the validity of the moral order. The validity means the efficiency, or it has the function, it has the effect. The moral order, is called karma niyama. We have the term karma and niyama. The karma, we understand that there are three kinds of karma: the mental karma, the verbal karma, and the physical karma. Niyama. What does niyama means? Niyama actually comes from the yoga, the Indian yoga in very old times. When one practices yoga, one should follow niyama and also yama. Yama and also niyama. Yama means restraint. Restraint means a yogi should not do this and that, should not eat something. There is a kind of restraint. Restraint is something that precepts. A yogi should follow very strict of precepts, not to do something and not to eat something, some food. No. This is called yama. Yama is restraint. Restraint means don't. One doesn't do this. One shouldn't do something. And one shouldn't eat something. This is called yama, Y-A-M-A. And then we have niyama. Niyama means one has to do something. Yama means one should not do something. And the niyama means one should do something. So we have two kinds of disciplines in the practice of yoga. And then in ancient Indian Brahmanism or other religions, we have different kinds of niyama. In some case, in Buddhism, we have the so-called Pancha Niyama. Pancha, P-A-N-C-A, Pancha. The Pancha means five. Niyama means order or principle, or we may call it the theory. There are five niyamas, very important. But niyama in Buddhism, we said there are five kinds of niyama. The first niyama is called bija. Bija, B-I-J-A, is pronounced as R, the lengthened R. Bija niyama. Bija means our seed. For example, the seed of a fruit or a seed of vegetable. However, in Buddhist psychology, the seed means our past tendency or our habitual tendency. This is called bija niyama. The second niyama is called uttu, U-T-U. Uttu niyama. Uttu means the season or the time. It means that when the spring comes, then it is cool, it is a very beautiful weather, and all the flowers blossom. And when summer comes, the climate becomes very hot. When winter comes, then the temperature is lower than summer. This is called uttu niyama. It means that even the seasons or the climate can influence our consciousness. This is called uttu niyama. And the third niyama is called karma. Karma niyama. It means if we have wholesome or good karma, then in future we will become happy. Or right now, when we have wholesome or good karma, right now we can feel peaceful. And to the contrary, if we have bad karma, at the same time, we will feel unhappy. We will suffer from our unwholesome karma. This is the third niyama. We call it karma niyama. Then the fourth niyama is called dhamma. Dhamma niyama. Dhamma niyama means if we observe precept, then our sense organs will become pure. Our mind will become more peaceful. And if we practice samadhi, then our attention can be concentrated. If we practice vipassana, we can develop insight. We can develop wisdom. This is called the Dhamma Niyama. On the other hand, if we don't listen to Buddha Dhamma, if we don't practice Siddha, Samadhi, and Vipassana, then our life is a kind of chaos. We suffer from afflictions, or we suffer from physical illness and spiritual unhappiness. We call it the Dhamma Niyama. And the last Niyama we call Citta, C-I-T-T-A. Citta Niyama. Citta Niyama means our mind. Citta means our consciousness. Our consciousness or our mind or our thinking can determine our behavior and can determine our happiness or suffering. It is the Citta Niyama. So we have Pancha Niyama first. The Vicca Niyama. This is our habitual tendency. Second is the Uttu Niyama. And the third, the Karma Niyama. Karma means our action. We have mental action or verbal action and physical action, as it is defined here as the moral order. Moral order means if we have morality, then we become pure in body and mind. The practice of morality or the practice of the discipline. Karma Niyama and the Dhamma Niyama, and the last one is Citta Niyama, Pancha Niyama. So Buddhism recognize survival of our death. It is come up with other religion, and also Buddhism recognize the efficiency of the moral order. Other religions always teach the followers to have some kind of discipline, but other religion doesn't advise the followers to practice samadhi and also vipassana. Other religion only emphasize the belief or worship to the God. However, in Buddhism, Buddha asks us to practice Siddha, Samadhi, and Vipassana. Buddha doesn't ask us to believe in him blindly. We should have the so-called right view, right thought. In early Buddhism, there's nothing about the faith in the very beginning. The faith only comes from the practice of satipatthana, only the practice of satipatthana and diligence and the discrimination. And after that, we can have the so-called root of belief. So it is not different. It is quite different from other religion. Other religion emphasize from the very beginning to the end only faith, belief, only faith, only belief, nothing else. But Buddhism emphasize the self-discipline, the concentration of mind, and the insight meditation. It is, in fact, the belief in a hereafter, in whichever way it is interpreted in each religion, under the recognition of the moral order that serve as the uniting factor of all religions. So we have the inter-religious dialogue. Inter-religious dialogue. That means the dialogue between different religions. And if you have ever attended the conference of the inter-religious dialogue, you can find that only two items can be discussed or shared by all the participants. One is the moral order, because all religions emphasize the practice of discipline or the practice of precept. And the other common item that all the religions can share with each other is the survival after death. Besides these two items, nothing is common between Buddhism and other religions. The first conference of inter-religious conference was held in 1893 in Chicago of the United States in 1893, the first conference of inter-religious dialogue. In concluding this chapter on the birth of Buddhism, as a middle position, it is interesting to notice here that the term middle assumes a geographical dimension as well. Geographical dimension means from the perspective of locality. It is quite interesting that Buddhism was developed in the so-called middle position of ancient Buddhism. As is well known, Buddhism arose in what was then called the middle region. The middle is called Majjhima in Pali, or Madhyama. Majjhima or Madhyama is called the middle. Machi or Madhya, and M-A. M-A means most, in English, most. So Majjhima means the most center, or the exact center. Madhya in Sanskrit, or Machi in Pali, that means middle. The M-A means the most. So Majjhima or Madhyama means the most center. It means the very center. The very center. That's Desa means a country or a region. Majjhima Desa, middle region. It is the same as China. The Chinese Han people always claim their country as the Middle Kingdom. In ancient time, the Middle Kingdom. Nowadays, the Chinese people are very proud of the so-called Middle Country. Buddhism arose in Middle region in North India. Of course, it is 2,600 years ago. And not in its adjacent regions. Adjacent means the neighboring or the next region to middle region. Pajanta Desa, Pajanta Desa. Okay, this is from the perspective of location, and we have the cosmological dimension. We could even add a cosmological dimension to the term middle. A cosmological dimension here doesn't mean the external universe. We have to bear in mind that in Theravada teaching or in Agama Sutras, the cosmos always refers to our five aggregates or refers to the different beings. So it is not the external world, not the external universe, but it is the cosmos, the world of sentient beings. Cosmological dimension means the angle of sentient beings to the term of middle. In the hierarchy of the Buddhist cosmos, we humans are like a middle class. We are a middle class, not in terms of economy, but it is in terms of cosmology or the hierarchy of different beings in Buddhism. Above us are the denizens of the celestial worlds who are all the time immersed in their own divine pleasures. Above us means the different beings above us, they are higher than us. They enjoy more present things than us. The denizens means habitants, or the people or the sentient beings of a certain place. The denizens of the celestial worlds, we may call them the heavenly beings, celestial beings. Celestial worlds means the heaven or the paradise in Christianity. Of course, it is different in Buddhism. In Buddhism, we call them the Deva, and the Devi. Deva means the male, and the Devi means the female, who are all the time immersed in their own divine pleasures. Their divine pleasures means the pleasures in their mind, not the pleasure as we human beings in our five sense organs, not the sensual desires, but the spiritual pleasures. Below us are the low levels of different beings who are too ignorant and all the time engrossed in attending to their elementary needs of food and shelter. We call them the low realm of the animals, hungry-gers, and the hell, the beings in the hell. They are too ignorant, not only too ignorant, but too greedy and too hatred. And all the time, they engross in attending to their elementary needs of food and shelter. And most of the time, they cannot satisfy their elementary needs of food and shelter, means eating and living. So it is only we humans, we have the solitary atmosphere and the necessary wherewithal to follow the teachings of the Buddha. Only we human beings who can thus realize the final goal of Buddhism. Because we human beings are in the middle of the Buddhist cosmology. Above us, we have the celestial beings or the angels. They enjoy all the time. They enjoy all the time. And lower than us, we have the three destinies of animals, ghosts, and hell. They suffer all the time. And we human beings are in the middle. Of course, we have happiness, but we are not so happy as the heavenly beings. And we also have suffering, but our suffering is not so severe as the low three destinies. So we are quite lucky. We have the solitary atmosphere. We are very fortunate atmosphere or surrounding or the situation. And the necessary wherewithal means asset or the property. We have the necessary property to follow the teachings of the Buddha. Only we human beings can thus realize the final goal of Buddhism. Only we can attain liberation from suffering, not the heaven beings and not the lower realms beings. It is not surprising, therefore, that as the Buddha himself says, the heavenly beings themselves fancy not to be burned as human beings is to go to heaven. In this case, we human beings is very rare to have our human body because we are fortunate to have good circumstance and opportunity to listen to the teachings of Buddha Dharma, because we are neither too happy nor too suffering. Sometimes we are happy, sometimes we suffer. However, we can have the fortune to listen to Buddhism and practice Buddhism and attain Nibbana, the final goal of Buddhism. We can have the complete liberation in our mind. The Buddha says that human beings themselves fancy Faith means that they hope, the heavenly beings hope that they desire to be born as human beings because they are too happy to listen to the Buddha Dharma, because they are too happy. They don't have the mentality to practice Buddha Dharma. For Buddhism, the true heaven is not up above, but here below in this terrestrial world of human beings. For Buddhism, the true heaven is not above us, not in the paradise, not in the heaven, but the true heaven is exactly on our earth. Well, we live here and now. We have to cherish our human body. We should not waste our human body. We have to cherish this life, to listen to Buddha Dharma, practice Buddha Dharma, and we should have the energy to practice Buddha Dharma, and we should have the faith that we can attain Nibbana in this very life, not in the future life, not after we die, but we have to attain Nibbana right here and right now. Okay, tonight it is very important for us to have the right view of Buddhism, because Buddhism only talks about our experience, which everybody can feel, can perceive, can understand right here and right now. We don't wait for the future, and we don't attribute the attainment of Nibbana to Buddha or Arhat. We can also attain Nibbana in this life. This is very important. The true heaven is here on earth, not somewhere beyond our earth. Our earth is the true heaven, and our human body is very rare to beget. We have to cherish this life and practice Buddha Dharma. Okay, this is the end of tonight's talk.
Professor?
Thank you all.
Professor?
Yes.
Yeah. I have two comments or questions.
Yes.
The first one is, you know, the concept of Buddha's storehouse, what means 如来藏. And this kind of concept emphasize there is an alaya vajnana or alaya consciousness, which is the S consciousness, and they thought this kind of consciousness seems to be unchanging because that can dominate the process of our rebirth. So I think that's also a kind of eternal reason. I believe it would not be accepted by the pure Buddhism. That's my first comment or question. And the second is, As we know, the Guan Yin worship is popular, especially in Chinese populated area, and the people always thought Guan Yin to be the goddess or the god, and always ask the blessing from Guan Yin. Does that also a kind of eternal reason? These two questions. What are professor's opinion about this?
Yes, the first in Guan Yin is called Avalokitesvara. The first in Guan Yin is a kind of skillful means. However, we have to know that in Buddhism, Guan Yin is a personification of compassion. Anybody who has compassion through wisdom, he or she can be called Guan Yin or Avalokitesvara. In Surangama Sutra, we know Avalokitesvara practice the profound teachings of the ears, the hearing organ. So he has to practice meditation to reform to his mind, to observe his mind, to meditate his mind, and in particular, to meditate on the nature of his mind. So this kind of teaching concerns about the development of concentration, samadhi, and wisdom. So the popular faith in Avalokitesvara is only a skillful means. The real teaching of the Buddha is we have to reflect on our mind. We have to come back to our mind nature. And as to your first question of the Alaya consciousness, or we call it Alaya Vijnana. Alaya Vijnana is regarded as the storehouse of our past karmas, or we call it a storehouse of our habitual tendencies. And we can experience our Adaya consciousness because our consciousness comes from our Adaya Vijnana. If we can observe our conceptions or any thought, then we can understand it is the product of our Vijnana, our Adaya Vijnana. So it is also within the scope of our experience. As to the Buddha nature or Buddha Gotra, or we can call it Buddha Gaba. Gaba means the storehouse of the Buddhahood. The storehouse of the Buddhahood is only a skillful term. It is also a skillful term. It means that our polluted Alaya consciousness relies on our Tathagata Gaba, or comes from our Tathagata Gaba. It is a skillful term. We cannot consider that our Tathagata Gaba as real, as concrete. It is only a teaching of skillful means given by the Buddha to those people who are afraid of hearing the teaching of Sunyata. Some people may believe we are real existent, and if they listen to the teaching of Sunyata or the teaching of voidness or emptiness, they are afraid of non-existence of their life. Therefore, the Buddha taught the teachings of Tathagata Garbha in order to let them to have the faith in their practice of Buddha Dharma. So it is also a kind of skillful teaching. We should not consider it as real existence. It is above whether existent or non-existent. It is the so-called Majjhima, the Majjhima Vada, as we already understand.
Yeah.
Professor
So
Fang?
it's also a skillful means.
Yes, it is a skillful means.
And not the real constant reality, not the soul.
It is not the idea as a soul. You have to bear in mind that all the Buddha's teaching are skillful means. Okay, we should not claim to. Okay, thank you.